Welcome to Business Casual. I am Mihae An, your host and author of The Stories We Tell and Perfectly Incomplete. Business Casual brings you unfiltered conversations with badass, inspiring, highly accomplished women. I am passionate about and believe in the power of sharing stories, our authentic, raw, incomplete stories, getting beyond the polished LinkedIn profiles to the real humans behind the titles. The guest of the last episode of Season 2 is my dear friend Maricel. We just met a few months ago, and I remember thinking she will hold a significant place in my heart, and she has. Our friendship has been growing quickly, and I am honored to call her a friend. Maricel is a deep thinker. She has incredibly sharp self-awareness, which she has cultivated very intentionally through a lot of self-reflection and writing. Some key takeaways from our episode include: internal motivation brings more lasting fulfillment than seeking external validation. Managing our inner critic through self-reflection is crucial for moving forward. Collective thriving and community mindset matter more than individual success alone. This episode is full of golden nuggets, really. I am so appreciative of Maricel openly, candidly sharing her journey so far. Please enjoy. Hi, Maricel. How are you?
I am living the dream, Mihei. How are you?
Doing good, thank you. Thank you for your time. I always start this episode with any guest. Thank you very much for the time and the willingness to share your stories.
I'm very honored and grateful for this opportunity.
Marcel, you are one of my favorite people whom I recently met. How quickly we built the rapport and built friendship. It is in a way so mind-blowing, isn't it? Like two very different humans from very different lives, and we just got connected, and now we are, tied as friends for life.
I know, I agree. When we had our first conversation, I just remember your energy is electrifying, if I can use that word, because when you start to speak about what makes you, light up, what you're passionate about, it just has this. I take some of that away and then I use it. It's like fuel for me. So I'm more than happy to connect with women like yourself, and I'm glad that we're building a budding relationship.
Yes. The the very much authenticity that you carry with you, Maricel. And so far, what I learned about you is you are such a strong person. Like your inner core is so strong. At the same time, you are such a soft, compassionate, empathetic person. That very two different strengths and aspects of the personalities, when you think about the spectrum, the strength and the such soft heart, the genuine heart, you have both in one package. And like, I don't know how else to explain the energy that I get from you. It is very, I find that attractive. So I'm very much attracted to you as friend. Like, yeah, drawn to you.
I think, Mihei, I've never looked at myself that way. So what you've actually just given me is a big gift, because a lot of the feedback that I received and continue to will either lean in one direction or the other, and I've never seen myself as both. And I think actually that's something that I'll probably journal about today, is the ability to hold both strength in terms of that firmness and decisiveness, and in some cases maybe even severity, but then it's the other side of that compassion and that softness. And truth be told, I'm actually learning to navigate how to be soft in a way that protects my boundaries. I'm sure a lot of women can likely relate to that. In the past, I've leaned very heavily into my softness, and it might not be career wise, but definitely in some of my personal relationships. And I found rather that it didn't always serve my best interests in the long run.
I can totally relate to that. Speaking of journaling, you are a writer, right? In that sense, I so far what I learned about you is that you express your thoughts and you organize your thoughts and digest what's happening around you through writing, which is quite of a similar that you and I have in that sense. Maybe if you don't mind sharing your journey so far, your journalism background and how you got to where you are now, where you work, which I find very inspiring, the work that you do right now. So if you don't mind, please.
Well, I don't remember when I started writing, to be honest, but writing and reading were big parts of my life. I just have these incredible memories from my childhood when my mom would sit me down before bed, like many moms or parents rather do. And there was one book in particular, and all I remember from this book is that it involved a lion and an elephant. But we would read together, and she would teach me how to read, and it would be our bedtime routine. And I still read copious amounts of books of everything, to be honest with you, on a daily basis. And naturally, I gravitated towards writing because what I think fascinated me most about these books from childhood and even now is their ability to inspire me in ways to take sometimes actions that I would have never imagined myself taking. And I've had journals from as young as 8 years old. I remember my first book purchase was a Babysitter's Club book. And it was called Boy Crazy Stacy. And I bought it at a bookstore. I grew up in Thorncliffe Park in Toronto, which is a neighborhood in Toronto. And my father used to work the morning shift so he could take care of me in the afternoon shift. And he liked to hang out with his friends at the coffee shop waiting for my mother to finish work so we could pick her up and go home. And I would just read on the floor of this bookstore for hours. And I saved up my allowance and I bought this book. And as you can tell, books and writing are very important things in my life because reading widely helps me understand the world and humans deeply. And I think that's where my compassion comes from. And I'm not to say that I've hit levels of compassion that are the standard setting or notable, but I find the more I read, the more curious I am, the more I lean into my curiosity, especially as I grow older. It helps me be a softer landing space for all types of perspectives, for all walks of life. It's very difficult for humans not to be judgmental. It's part of our wiring, of course. First impressions matter because what are we scanning for? Are you a safe person? Will you be emotionally and psychologically safe for me? But when you open your mind and devour the kinds of books that I love to read, you begin to understand that many of us are the same but express it differently or don't express it, and we tend to navigate big emotions and big life points differently, and one isn't better than the other. They're just different. It's better for that person. And I'm babbling on, as you can see, because I'm very passionate about this. But all to say, reading and writing are two things that I love the most.
And how did you get into journalism? Is it because of that passion that you carried through your childhood? It was in a way like no brainer to get into the field. How did that work out for you?
A lot of the decisions I made were because someone who was further along in life saw something in me and said, I think you're really good at that. And I think you should try it. My parents were trying to put me down a pathway of medicine. They wanted me to be a doctor. They wanted me to follow In their ideas, what they wanted from their daughters was find a secure job that would give you comfort and give you financial comfort, so you don't have to worry about your next job or your next paycheck. And they were pushing me down the pathway of medicine because they believed that that would be great for me. What they didn't know was that I was absolutely not passionate about any of the studies that would support that, despite the fact that I did well in them. What I loved most was reading and writing. And my parents didn't quite understand how I could create a career from my writing and from the kind of things that gave me passion, because they weren't exposed to that themselves, right? So it was my teachers actually who used to tell me, "You're a talented writer. Your perspective is interesting," and they would enter me into these different writing contests, and I would win. And it was a teacher in high school who said, have you thought about journalism?" And I hadn't. But I started to watch, 2020 was a show that I watched with my mom, and I grew up wanting to be the next Barbara Walters, the next Oprah Winfrey. I just thought that the way that they communicated with folks to tell a compelling story was fascinating. I couldn't quite put my finger on what it actually was that attracted me to this. So I went to journalism school. I was a reporter at 680 News, which is a leading radio station in Toronto, and with sister stations across the country. And I covered everything from parades to crime investigations to, politics, everything that you can think of I covered, because I was just eager and hungry. And from there, another mentor of mine said, "There's a business sense about you. I think that you should go into corporate communications." And then I followed that path and then found myself building a career for 10 years, predominantly on the large PR agency side, working on incredible brands, everyone from Nintendo to HP Enterprise to Crest, Colgate, CoverGirl, you name it. I've been pretty blessed in my career.
How did you get into the work that you do right now?
Great question. I actually started my work here by being a partner of Women of Influence through my strategic communications firm. So I also grew and built a strategic comms business for 7 years. And Women of Influence was a client of mine. And I was helping with content, with public relations, with big launches for the research that was coming out of the organization. And when the organization was sold in May of 2024, I saw leadership opportunity surface. And I had reached a point in my career where I had proven a lot to myself, because a lot of the things that I did was really to prove whether or not I had the capacity, the drive, the grit to accomplish goals. And a lot of those goals are internal, and it's about my growth, not necessarily about titles or paychecks. It was about how am I growing through these experiences. And when I saw that leadership opportunity come up, I thought, what a great way for me to channel my skill set and my ambition into something that will positively impact women in their careers and in their businesses. So that is what I get to do day in and day out, is build community, speak and connect with incredible women like you who are, in their own careers, carving a pathway for other women to follow, making it a little bit easier as the years progress for women to advance to levels of leadership and to reimagine what this world could be.
You're such an inspiring person, Maricel.
Thank you.
Good as I'm hearing your stories. One of the things, there are many things that you just said, I'm sure our audience will get a lot out of. But one of the things that I wanted to dive more deep is the internal motivations or proving yourself as opposed to seeking the external approval or recognition. How did you get there? I mean, the reason behind this question is that it is very common that we see that, and I think in a way it is also human nature that we want recognition. We want that external validation to feel valued or feel valuable, our existence value. Very much external, a lot of it. So how did you create that internal sense or internal compass when a lot of noises out there that's influencing you?
You met me at a really interesting time in my life. So I'm going to be very honest and transparent and be as authentic and genuine as I can with this response. I got here by being the complete opposite and by valuing external validation, almost over indexing on that. I got here by placing a ton of value on, my title, what salary I commanded, or how big my business was, measuring by the kind of metrics, the traditional metrics that signal to society, that signal to the world, I've made it. I am someone who is, what's the word I'm looking for? I am someone who should be respected, who should be seen as an expert. But I was looking solely for those external markers. A lot of my self worth was determined by what others thought about me and said about me. And I think that we should absolutely consider the perspectives that those outside of ourselves, friends, family, peers, mentors, we should absolutely consider that, because that helps us refine our self-awareness. What are you putting out the world? How is it being received? And what does that mean about, is that really what you want to be known for and remembered for? I think that's important. But I was at a place where my worth, how I felt about myself, was external. And it was because my relationship with myself was fractured. And it was fractured for a number of reasons. And that work is not easy to do, but I definitely went through what I can only call a process of individuation, and had to rebuild that internal self-worth, that internal posturing. And that comes with a clear set of, and I'll use the word standards, that I hold myself to. And it's not easy, but it's something as small as, if someone cuts me off in traffic or does something that is what I would consider not so considerate, is, will I be moved by something external like that and respond in a way that isn't me, right? And that's a small thing, but I believe that small practices like that are what it takes to show up like that in bigger arenas. So one of the things I like to do is, when someone is not so nice on the road, I say, Maricel, just assume that there is someone or something important in that vehicle that they need to get to, and give them grace. So it really is about extending the grace that I've learned to give myself externally. But it took a lot of work. And it continues to take a lot of work. I am definitely not fully baked, but I'm definitely doing my best to show up as the highest version of myself as I can.
Yeah, our journey is not complete until the final breath, right? We continue to grow, we continue to evolve as human. Your windy journey, your career journey, has been not straightforward. You've tried multiple different things, which is another thing that I find it interesting and relevant. There is, I believe, quite a bit of pressure on all of us, especially younger generation, where you need to figure out early, like at what age are we graduating high school and getting into university, picking major, right? And there's pressure. Okay, you got this education, now do something with this education and you better figure out. So that pressure, I definitely had it a lot, and I see younger folks go through that. um, and the more I hear about this windy career journey that people have, the more I want to share that story, so that way there is less pressure for more people around the need to figure out our life such early on. I believe even at my age and your age, like midlife we're going through, um, it, we're still figuring out. So yeah, that pressure, I believe, needs to just loosen the grip a bit, especially when our society is going so fast, like changing so fast. All that said, what I wanted to ask you is, throughout your journey, I'm sure there are many proud moments for you. If you have to choose one to share, what would that be?
What am I most proud of?
And why, right? We all have reasons to remember certain things in certain ways, what happened in our life.
I am proud of many things, both personally and professionally, but the one thing that I'm absolutely most proud of is when my father, so I was working at an organization, it was 2018. It was a very difficult time in my professional career, difficult because it was incredibly busy and I had very high profile clients at the time and I was working incredible hours. I feel like I've overused the word incredible. There's no other way for me to describe it because I don't want to add a negative connotation to it. All to say is I was completely consumed by my career and I was at an age where I accepted that because there was a place I wanted to get to. I was still thinking very linearly about my career at this point. If I do A, B, and C, naturally I will progress into D, E, F, right? Well, life had other plans for me, and my father experienced a massive health challenge. He lost his sight. I won't say suddenly because we were aware that his health was declining in certain areas that would impact this. But it was sudden in the sense that you never plan for, you don't anticipate it. It kind of pulls the rug from under your feet when something like this happens to someone you love so much and who plays such an important role in your life. When that happens, all of a sudden I became a caregiver to my father alongside my sister and my mother. My mother, just to give you some additional context, was preparing and planning for retirement, and we had plans for them both to ride off into the proverbial sunset and enjoy their life. Well, I had to step away from my corporate career, and in order for me to sustain myself financially, what was the next lever that I could pull? Hybrid work was not a common thing at this time. It was not necessarily accepted. It certainly wasn't accepted by the organization I was with. And that's not because they weren't wonderful people. It wasn't common. So I had to step away, and with my back against the wall, I started to build a business. I built a business out of complete necessity, and that business, I love it dearly, gave me the time, the energy, and the ability to provide needed attention to my family while sustaining myself financially. I never wanted to lean on my parents like that. They had enough on their plate. That was one thing I absolutely did not want them to worry about. And I'm very proud of that. Because navigating something like that is difficult emotionally, and making sure that my father, from a mental health perspective, was also well taken care of and felt like he did not have to worry. I wanted my mom to feel like she didn't have to worry, that they could rely on me, absolutely, and my sister to be there for them, to navigate this as a family without being distracted or feeling like I need to prioritize something else in a particular moment while they absolutely needed me. So I'm incredibly proud that I was able to navigate that and while building something that created value for businesses.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Of course, my pleasure.
There's such powerful story. And back to my comment about you, the very strong you and the very compassionate you, the genuine you. There you go. There's the story.
I never looked at it that way. So I actually really appreciate that perspective because in my mind, it was absolute, there was no other way. There was no other path. I and folks might have a different perspective on this, but I am very hard on myself in terms of what I expect of myself. And I measure myself against the version that I was at a point that I want to grow from. Not grow out of, but grow from. And the bar is always raising, and I'm okay with that. I'm completely satisfied with being unsatisfied because my relationship to being unsatisfied is very healthy. It is not, I don't punish myself. I give myself, constructive feedback, but not in a way that I'm against myself. It's all about like self-coaching and how can we raise the bar today, even if it's an inch, even if it's that one little step further.
I love how you put it. Completely satisfied with not satisfied. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man.
Like it's okay. Like
Mhm.
It's okay because it's not necessarily about better. It's about different, right? If I look at my younger self, and I have to be honest with you, there were times when I was younger in my earlier on in my career where I was absolutely driven by title, by salary, by, back then we all of us were in the office and that corner office was when you've made it, right? I was absolutely driven by that. Now, do I look back at that version of myself and say, oh my God, what an egomaniac. Oh my goodness, like I can't believe that I ever thought like that. No, it's a rite of passage. Obviously. I mean, this is reality. I don't look at that and judge myself. I look at that and say, I like that fire. That fire is great, but it needs to change. It needs to mature. We need to add some responsibility to that fire. You know what it's like when you hold that kind of ambition and you're just rearing to go. You're fresh out of school, you're fresh into your career. There's so many things motivating you, and that's great. But I think what I'm trying to say is it's about how do I take those incredible things and not make them better, but at this stage of my life, at all that I've grown through and all that I've experienced, what does that look like now? Because it certainly should not look like, for me, of course, like it did yesterday, 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
So interesting that timing wise, last night on my way home, attended an event in the evening, so it was a late night, and I find listening to podcasts on the drive always just appropriate. I don't know how else to put it, appropriate for me to spend that driving time, like mentally occupying myself. And that podcast guest was talking about, I went through the journals that I wrote many years ago when I was 20 something, quite young. And as I was reading through, like I could not help but like just cringe, right? How egocentric, right? I was, and all the thought that I had, and what drove me. It just, and as I was listening, I could not agree more. Like when I read my journal, like back then, like, I can't.
I'm going to be honest with you. I sometimes still have that reaction, and then I pause and I try to imagine, 18-year-old Maricel, 20-year-old Maricel, and what more could I have expected from her at that point, right?
Yes,
So,
exactly.
what I love most about journaling is that you are gifting yourself the opportunity to literally step back in time. And I don't want to go too far down the spiritual route here, but that's how I built my self-compassion, right? Because what is the context of the person that I was back then? What was I navigating, right? As a woman, like the intersectionality of my experience, and why did I show up that way? I have compassion for her. I get it. I get it. And I thank her because honestly, without those steps, without all of her mistakes, without any of that, I wouldn't be able to sit here with you today. One, developing a friendship with someone like you, and two, being able to articulate the journey that I've had.
Exactly, right? And that very fact that we can look back and reading through and cringe, that means we grew, right?
Yeah.
We didn't grow if we're still the same person, like 20 years younger version of ourselves, and now, then, we didn't really grow much. So, yeah, it just proves that we grew. We're
And I think,
more mature.
you know, but we grew, but we can still be silly. It shows up in different ways, right? I absolutely have not completely mastered that egocentric part of like that. It's a part of you,
Yes.
right? It just isn't at the helm. It isn't the version of you that's making decisions. It isn't the version of me, like that version of me is not the one having the conversation right now. There's another role for that version of me to play. This is how I understand myself and how it helps me understand other people is oftentimes We meet somebody in a meeting, we develop first impressions, we're very human, of course, that's natural. And I think it's me understanding that I got a very thin slice of that person in that moment. And then to create an entire narrative around who they likely are, what they likely believe in would be so unfair, because I wouldn't want someone to take, one interaction and develop a narrative about me just on that one interaction. And then hold that and develop a bias for or against me, right? And it's not easy. It's you have to be incredibly mindful of it, but that's one of the things I journal about. What are some assumptions that I made today that probably aren't true? Because I like, again, it's about holding yourself to that standard. It's like, I wouldn't want someone, especially if I wasn't showing up in my best form because of other reasons, for what example, to hold that against me. So I try very hard to bring that to everybody. I try. Am I successful all the time? No. Am I successful most of the time? No. Some of the time, I'll give myself that.
There you go. Is there any question that people don't really ask you, but you hope that people ask and you believe to be important question?
One of the questions, I think, I don't know if there's a question that no one asks me that I want them to ask, but there's a question that I ask myself a lot, which is, how do I, and especially now because I'm incredibly lit up. So I like the metaphor of fire a lot. I'm lit up by the work that I have the privilege of doing. I truly am. And I am a very early bird, and I can go for a long time in terms of, sustaining a very busy work day. And I think a lot of highly ambitious people can relate to that. But I've burned myself badly in the past. So it's, how do you carry that fire responsibly and without burning yourself out? I got to be honest with you, Mihei, because I'm so lit up, I will wake up in the middle of the night because I have an idea, or for whatever reason, my brain decides to deliver me insights at 3:00 in the morning. And I will want to get up and head to my office, my home office, and start just jotting things down and brainstorming with myself and just making sure I capture it. And how do I hold the tension of, I'm lit up, but it's not sustainable to live like that. And I need longevity. I need sustainability, because the work that our organization does the results aren't going to come overnight. It's a long game, right? This is a marathon. So how do I sustain that over this marathon of my career? I haven't been great at that. So that's a question that I revisit all the time.
Very same, Maricel. Very, very same. What can we do?
If anyone out there has the answer, I would love to.
Right? Yes.
Here's what I've done. And I'm not saying this is the right answer, but this is how I'm trying to navigate this. I'm very clear on where I place my time, my energy, and my attention. And as a result of that, I think that really filters out everything that is a nice to have, or, an extra or fluff that maybe has made it into your sphere of things you need to do, things you need to think about that don't necessarily need to be there. So my 4 pillars in my life are my family. First and foremost, my parents are the most important. My parents and my sister, my entire family, are the most important people in my life. They get the best. I want them to get the best of me, so I carve out that time on weekends especially, so that they are getting a version of me that isn't distracted by work. My career is very important to me. I'm going to be honest with you, I've had a contentious relationship with my career as a result of burnout. But I was blaming the wrong thing. It wasn't my career. It was the choices I made about my career, about how I treated myself, about not eating, working out, forcing myself to do things when my body said enough, right? Self-mastery is my other pillar. I spend a lot of time reading, journaling to better understand myself, learning. I'm incredibly curious. I have a rich inner world. I love learning. I love learning about things that I'm ignorant to, because then what dispels ignorance? Well, Go learn about it, educate yourself about it, be curious about it. And then the fourth pillar is wealth. I believe that, for me, money is a tool. And what I want to use that tool for is the collective advancement and thriving of my family and my community. So those are the four pillars. If anything falls out of those four pillars at this point in my life, it's not going to get my time, my energy, or my attention. And I'm absolutely okay if opportunities don't come to fruition as a result of that. I'm absolutely okay if relationships drop off as a result of that, because that clarity and that simplicity, I believe, will make me incredibly effective in all the areas that I want to be effective in.
Thank you. I wrote down your pillars. I love the self-mastery piece. I haven't really heard that piece as pillars. Like we all talk about family for sure, friendship, career, wealth, and so on. But self-mastery, I haven't. I think that's the way that you put it is bang on. One thing that I recently heard from one of other podcast guests actually is that asked her about work-life balance or harmony, however we put it, given that we wear many different hats. And one thing that she's doing now is mixing work and friendship together, meaning that when she volunteers or sitting on certain boards, she does that along with her friends. So that way, as they are working, they are also hanging out or spending time with friends. They carve out time outside of all that too, but they get to spend more time together and build stronger relationship that way. And as you are talking about your different pillars, I was thinking how privileged I am right now, sitting here with you, having these conversations. Our relationship is both work relationship and friendship. We are spending time together like this. It is fulfilling that both sides of important aspects of our lives. Right? So yeah, I felt very privileged as listening to you talking about your pillars.
Gosh, likewise, Mihei. And you know why? I think it's because and again, this is just my personal experience. I've had relationships, personal relationships, where a certain dimension, a certain version of me is what is sticky in that relationship. And as people grow, sometimes the version that you're becoming no longer aligns or brings value to that relationship for whatever reason. And I used to hang on very tightly. Why? We've been friends since elementary school. We've been friends since high school. There's a sense of loyalty there. And the difficult thing that I've had to learn is that you don't have to disintegrate a relationship in a way where it's contentious. I think that's obvious. But it's letting go when the natural flow of life is calling you to do so. And how do you tell that? The conversations feel like work. The connection feels like work. It feels like performance. And I just wanted to stop performing. And sometimes relationships require you to sustain them. And I just decided those weren't the ones for me anymore. With a lot of respect for what we created together as a friendship or whatever relationship we held, understanding what's good for me. Oh, sorry, what's not good for me is also not what's good for you, because you don't want to be friends with someone who feels like it's work, right? But that doesn't, just because you don't hold the same structure of the relationship doesn't mean that, what's the opposite of not being a friend anymore? Well, it's not an enemy. It's just a friend from high school that I knew, X number of years ago. That's all it has to be. I think it was a paradigm shift for me in my younger years, when I started letting go of that it didn't have to be some dramatic episodic thing.
Life is so organic, right? It
Yeah.
is not cookie cutter thing, but it flows like river flows through. in a way that like the the river or stream, as it goes through whatever environment, it goes this way, that way. It is not strict. The movement is not strict. When you're describing your paradigm shift, in my head, the image that I had in my head was the river flowing through, yeah, different environments. What is misconception people often have about you?
I would say I feel like I've entered a different chapter personally and professionally very recently. In the past, and I pause here because I question, and I'll have to write about this later, whether what I'm about to say was me projecting my own insecurities onto other people, how much of it was mine and how much of it was theirs. I think it's fair to say that, like, we're not going to come to a hard and fast number on this, but both parties have to take a responsibility, right? I don't want to absolve anyone of our interactions in the past. All to say, in the past, I feel I was deeply underestimated. A few examples, I think a lot of women can relate to this. There was a big authority gap for me when I was running my business. Women business owners didn't question my expertise. I didn't have to prove my worth to them, both with my fee structure or what I brought to the table. But I found with other potential clients, there was a gap. There was an authority gap. There were, yeah, I think I was underestimated. I don't think that some folks at that particular time in my life saw what I was capable of. But I've also experienced the other end of it. And this is a testament to the team that I have now. I really have to shout them out, the leadership at my organization. Mihei, I don't think that I've ever experienced a workplace where I showed up as my authentic version, and that means I'm incredibly ambitious because what we are aiming to do at my organization is a big goal, and I believe in it. I believe in the positive impact it can have, not just for women, but for our workplaces, for society, culturally. I have never felt more supported and more seen. I work with a group of leaders who, when I'm on fire, they don't try to blow out my flame. They are fanning me. They are supporting me. They are giving me feedback that is refining me. I have never experienced that. So how am I seen now? I think as someone who can bring value to an organization and drive growth and secure meaningful results. And it is a blessing to be seen that way after spending a few years going back to the table, proving my worth, or developing or adding to the credentials that I bring professionally to signal I know what I'm doing, I'm smart, I'm coachable, I'm someone you want to have on your team. I find that I don't have to do that work as often or at all anymore.
For sure, the environment that we put ourselves in, whether it is physical environment or organizational environment, the people we surround ourselves with, and so on, that matters. In addition to that, is there anything based on your experience that anyone who's going through that, like authority gap or misjudged or underestimated at the moment, what can be helpful for them?
Now, I'll point to a specific situation to see if I can give an example. When I was in a position where what my role, how my leaders saw me, or those who were I was reporting into, didn't align with what I knew I could bring to the table. What bothered me about that was I didn't feel like I was being used to my full capacity. And what happens to someone who thinks that way, who I'm very cautious of saying this because I don't want to come across as egotistical, but when you drive a performance vehicle like, say, a Ferrari, you don't keep it in the garage. You take it out on the road.
Yes.
It's built to be a powerful vehicle. I see myself in that same way. I want to be challenged. I want to be stretched. I like solving complex challenges. I like raising my internal standards to see how did I grow from yesterday. I think we've covered that very well. And when I'm in a position where I feel like I am intentionally, to be honest with you, being held back from achieving my full potential, I have to have a really difficult discussion with myself and say, based on a pattern of behavior, I try to remove the emotion out of it because it gets very emotional. What is the pattern of behavior that is actually holding me back? Because I want to remove what's actually happening from what I'm feeling so I can get very clear. I validate my feelings, but I need to give myself clear examples of how is this actually happening versus what I'm feeling. And if that pattern of behavior really is inhibiting my growth and limiting my potential and impacting me in a way where I feel like I'm not growing, and for someone like me, the lack of growth is detrimental to my well-being. You have to decide whether or not the organization or the person that holds control over your trajectory is the kind of organization or person that will be willing to see your perspective, one, and will do something about it. And if the answer is no, then you have to make a decision, I think, that is in your best interests.
What I've tried, very similar to what you just said, and I have created opportunities for myself for my growth. That included not only finding different job opportunity, that definitely is one way. Another way that I tried was within the organization or within the role that I'm in, I could still identify a few different things that I could do and try and volunteer and so on, including my personal passion projects or personal whatever initiatives, so that way I could still test myself and grow myself and feel the achievement and growth. Very similar to you, when I feel like I'm the water in a tiny puddle that is stale puddle, that drives me crazy like nothing else. Like Ferrari just parked in a parking garage, closed parking garage, I just scream. I I can't. So there were few different things that I tried, and it doesn't have to totally equal leaving the job and just quitting the job, right? That it doesn't have to be that.
It doesn't have to be that way, absolutely. But I think it takes a lot of reflection and sometimes difficult conversations to say this is how I'm feeling, this is why, this is what I've noticed, and I'd like to address it. And as long as there's a path forward that you see, then I think that's a great thing.
And I love the way that you phrased that self-reflection and conversation with self first, right? What we want to avoid for sure is without refining our thoughts, without having the conversation with ourselves first, just downloading whatever we are feeling to another human being, it never goes well.
Oh, it's like word soup.
That's a more graceful way to put it than word vomit. I would just word vomit. Yeah. And one of the things that I thought about as you were sharing your perspective and stories was what I didn't do well before and what I try to do better now is taking the right amount of responsibilities and accountability for things when, especially when something goes wrong. Think that self-blame and just embracing all the things that went wrong with myself and just right punching myself. Why did you do that? You're such a loser. All the narrative. I try not to do that. And of course, we have to take accountability, the right amount. But taking too much, that doesn't help us, doesn't help others, doesn't help the organization we serve. I'm trying to be very mindful of that these days.
That's a really good point, Mihai. I like to think about my inner critic is not the kindest voice that I listen to, but I do in the there. I deal with the inner critic voice in a few ways. When it's not so nice, I used to fight it. I also used to really lean too far into what that inner critic was saying and believe it. And now I really try to straddle the middle and say, this inner voice is coming up for a reason. The words that I'm hearing internally or what's being delivered to me, what truth does it hold? What is it pointing me to? What is that? What is it? What's actually coming up for me? And it could be a number of things, right? Everyone is so complex and different, and that inner critic, that voice, is informed by who knows culture, the way messaging from our childhood about what we should be, how we should show up in the world. And that's why I go back to journaling. That's why I understand what my voice is and what I've just absorbed over several years, over the media that I consumed in the past, over what I might have heard the other day, or something I'm comparing myself to subconsciously. It's always going to be there. I've stopped trying to stop it, but I think I bring a level of trying to understand it and then saying, okay, what do I do? What can I do better, honestly? And what did I do really well?
What's next for you?
What is next? Well, we're at an exciting time at the organization. Professionally, it's about scale. Absolutely. In the first few months of my role, I really wanted to listen to the community that we are so grateful to serve. And what does listening look like? It's hopping on calls and doing virtual coffees, very much like the one you and I hopped on. And just being curious and saying, what challenges are you navigating right now? What resources are you aware of? What resources do you wish you had? What does support look like and feel like to you? Because we didn't want to do any guessing in terms of what we created and what we delivered. It's also reading comments after our LinkedIn lives on posts about articles we've written on topics that we wanted to see if it resonated. And that really helps you understand the very complex challenges that women are navigating personally, professionally, and at the intersection of those two worlds. So it's about scale. Personally, it's really about integration. I have done a lot. Just to give you some context there, I finished what I can only describe as a game-changing and life-changing educational experience in 2024. And that happened in parallel with a very deep and profound personal challenge that I was learning to navigate. And coming out of that, I grew intensely. I sometimes don't recognize the version of me that shows up on a day-to-day basis, and I'm working towards integrating all of that growth into embodied action. Because it's one thing to grow in terms of, oh, look at all that I've learned. Look at all the knowledge, whether self-knowledge or external knowledge that I've accumulated. And it's synthesizing that and saying, how does that inform how I show up as a person? How I show up at work, how I show up as a daughter, how I show up as a human being or a part of my community. And the embodiment part is the most challenging. I can read all day, but I want to walk the talk.
Any question that you were hoping to address, but I didn't get to ask yet?
There was one question that you shared with me to help me brief on this, and it was about, I believe it was about role models. I had a couple of notes on this. I just really I love them so deeply, my parents, so I really want to shout them out. So they've been the biggest influence on my life. As Filipino immigrants, they navigated incredible challenges. And despite the financial hardship that they faced, despite all the challenges that they faced as young adults, they were pretty young when they arrived in Canada. They were pretty young when they had me. Despite all those challenges, the one thing that my parents consistently demonstrated to me was commitment, relentless commitment to our collective thriving. And when I say collective thriving, I don't just mean our immediate family. I also mean family in the Philippines that they brought here so that we could grow and prosper together. And anytime someone from our community in the Philippines, from the region or the neighborhood my parents lived in, came to Canada and needed a place to stay, our door was always open, and it was always about, we just want you to get a solid footing so that you can go off and plant your own seeds. It was never just about their personal interests. They always thought collectively. They always had a community mindset. They still do. And I reflect on that a lot. I aim to walk a similar path in terms of the impact. So that was the only thing I really wanted to shout out.
Based on my knowledge about you so far, you are living that legacy of your parents. You are already doing that. Like every interaction that I have with you, it is always going back to what can I do here to serve? That curiosity that you have and the listening that you're doing in your professional life, that in your personal life as well, the whole harmony of that, yeah, you are doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's I will take that, and I receive that with a lot of gratitude. Thank you. That affirms that I'm onto something.
You are. Oh, what a treat, what a joy. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure, Mihei. Thank you for thinking of me. I'm honored. I appreciate you holding space for me to share a bit about my story, and thank you for the friendship that we're building. Thank you.
So much love.
Yes.
Yeah. Until next time, Maricel.
Sounds great. Thank you. Bye.
That's it for today. Thank you for tuning in. Please remember, you have more agency than you often realize. Choose your stories. I'll see you next time.